I'd like to call to order the March 6, 2023 Canal Winchester City Council work session. Roll call, please.
Ms. Amick?
Present.
Ms. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Busker?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Milliken?
Here.
Mr. Shea?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here. Also in attendance, we have Mayor Ebert, Public Service Director Matt Peoples, Development Director Lucas Hare, Finance Director Amanda Jackson. First request for council action tonight, Resolution 23-009. Clerk, please read the title.
A resolution strongly urging the Ohio Governor and members of the Ohio General Assembly to restore the local government fund to pre-recession levels.
Mayor Ebert.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Well, I put an explanation in my report too, but I'll kind of go over this briefly. In 1934, I believe it was, there was a sales tax that went into effect in the state of Ohio. And from that sales tax, all the cities and villages at that time were supposed to get, I think, 3.68% of whatever revenue came into the state. Was supposed to be divvied out amongst the rest of us. And during the Kasich administration back in 2008, as you recall, we were all going through a recession at that time, and there was an $8 billion budget gap. And to fill that budget gap, they took about half, a little over half of our revenue from the sales tax away, and turned it as a permanent or a temporary solution to their problem, and we get that back someday. Well, someday has not come yet, and the $8 billion budget gap is still about 10 years ago. So all the local governments, cities and villages, and all the entire state actually are going to send a letter to Ohio Municipal League and ask the legislators and the governor to help refund, or not refund, but at least get it started back up again. At the very minimum, don't take any more. But we'd like to get the 3.68%, which we were getting at one time. We'd like to build it back up to that point. So that's about it.
Questions, discussion?
I just want to point out one thing. There is a misspelling in the title, government-y instead of government.
Where at? I'm sorry.
On the resolution,
Oh, on the resolution.
it has a Y instead of a T on the end of government.
Okay.
Question. Mayor Ebert, when, if this were to go into, if there were enough cities and enough influence behind this, is this something that would take several years to get reinstated, or is this something that we could?
No, I wouldn't think so. I would think the legislators would just have to reinstate it in the meetings like any of you would on any resolution or financial fund.
Any other discussion? Do I have a motion to move Resolution 23-009 to full council?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Amos, second by Mr. Buskirk. Roll call, please.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
No.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Amick?
Yes.
Brings us to Resolution 23-010. Clerk, please read the title.
A resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a depository agreement with Huntington National Bank for the deposit of public funds and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I'm not sure that any of these are on. All right, we're going to work on that. The resolution in front of you this evening is for a 5-year agreement with Huntington National Bank. Per the revised code, we are required to have these agreements with them for the city's deposits. This was brought to me after your last meeting, although our last agreement with them expired as of December 31st of 2022. So you will see an emergency declaration on there to get this passed this evening so that things I mean, we still have deposits there and all that, but just to smooth things out and keep us going. You will likely also see agreements similar in nature coming from our other banks as well. I do believe Chase is on a very similar schedule to that of Huntington National Bank, so we will probably see that one. I believe that one might be in June. But again, this is something we do every 5 years to allow us to deposit money with this bank. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Discussion? Questions? Mr. Shea?
Before we came to the meeting, you were kind enough to do some quick emailing with me about banking and interest rates. And the whole reason is that about a month ago, I was talking to one of my personal banks, and I said, "What are you paying me on that account?" And they were paying us 0.01%. And I said, "Okay." I said, "All right." I said, "I'm going to take it over to another bank because they're going to give me 3.6. And they said, here's 4.4 and 4.14. And so we took that. So the reason I'm bringing this up now is that interest rates have changed dramatically. With the amount of cash that we have on hand, we should absolutely be shopping what kind of interest rates we can return for the city. I understand that the operating account does not pay interest, but I would like that, I think that should be part of the discussion from a business standpoint for the city.
They're not going to give us that kind of rate in this agreement. It wouldn't be a sound financial business decision for Huntington Bank to put a rate in this agreement for 5 years. The other thing is, it's all dependent on the type of account we have with them and the access to the money, how quickly we get access to the money. Now, they may give us a higher interest rate, but they also may charge me every time I need to touch that money. And so there's pros and cons to every type of account out there. And so that's why I have a representative from Huntington, I have a representative from Chase, and we talk on a very regular basis about these accounts and what's best for the city. So where we're at right now with it is what Huntington has deemed, their representative has deemed is appropriate for us, given what Huntington can offer us.
And how much is that?
How much is what?
The interest rate that they're offering the
We
city?
have an operating account with them, so we don't get interest on the operating account with them.
Understood, but we have all these other accounts that you sent me. One of them was with Huntington, I think it had $6 million in it?
Correct, and that's our bond anticipation note money.
Okay, and are we,
So we've been taking money out of our operating account, putting it into that, and they set that up as a secondary operating account. It's basically a clearing account right now in their eyes.
I'm not sure I understand. Can you help me understand, please?
It's not a checking, it's not a savings account. It's not an interest-bearing account because that's not the way it was set up, because it is a short-term account.
Okay. Are we getting sweeps on it?
No, we don't have sweeps with any of them.
Is that something that we're allowed to do statutorily?
Yes, but the interest rate wasn't worth it.
Is it now? When is the last time you looked at it?
The last time I talked to my Chase representative, about a month ago.
And there's no benefit for us looking at increasing our revenues on interest rates from the cash that we have on hand?
I'm not saying that that's not a possibility. I keep moving money from that to our long-term investments, but we also need to have cash on hand, which is the fine balance that we're playing right now because we're talking about potentially paying off $6 million worth of debt.
Absolutely.
So we're getting higher interest rates on the long-term
Yes.
money? Okay, well, all right. That's
That's
where,
good.
yeah, that's where the,
Yeah, well, I mean, is there anything, so we're earning no money on the $6 million that's sitting in the bond anticipation account?
That money is going to go away within the next couple of months, which is why it
It doesn't
is.
sit there, it comes and goes.
It's a very fluid account. Okay, thank you very much.
any other questions? No? Do I have a motion to move Resolution 23-010 to full council?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Walker, second.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Amick. Roll call, please.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Miss Amick?
Yes.
Miss Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
All right, that brings us to old new business. First up is pedestrian safety. Any further news on pedestrian safety?
On the Washington-Waterloo intersection, we have engaged a firm to go in and do the striping So whenever they said that they would schedule it in March.
Okay.
March training.
Mayor and council salaries. We want to have a discussion on that?
Plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, I'd like to start by just saying, you know, after chewing on this a little bit more and realizing I'm the one that came up with the idea of pairing the salary with the administrative position, I think it would behoove us to move somewhat quickly on this, in the case that if for some reason it does not pass, that we're up against a wall as far as timing wise, because we have to approve salaries by July, I believe it is that correct?
Hours, yeah, where's.
Yeah. So, you know, that'll sneak up on us rather quickly, and, you know, if we're not doing the first meeting in July, I think we need to get something down.
So, Mr. Boggs, one of my questions I have is, if we decide to look at a charter change, what's the latest that we have to put this on the ballot for charter change?
So for any charter change, it would need to go to the Franklin County Board of Elections no later than 90 days before the November general election. So that would be August 3rd, something thereabouts. And there's also a maximum, it can't be more than 120 days before the general election. There's a window you have to hit. And just to be clear, in terms of a charter change, what are you referencing?
So if we were to go and look at a city administrator strong position on a charter and having that change, that's what we were asking, is just how that would be.
Yeah.
So the August 8th special election date that they have coming up, would we potentially be able to get in for that one?
No, it has to be on a general election date.
Okay.
I can't say that I'm for putting a charter change for this position in this election cycle. We talked before about, you know, whoever may or may not choose to run for a mayor position, not knowing what they're running for, right? And so if the charter gets changed at the same time as a mayoral election, you know, somebody may be getting not what they bargained for, I guess, if that makes sense.
It does. I think for me, this is the wrong year for us to look at it because of the mayoral election.
Agreed.
Because looking at two dominant salaries, looking at two positions who have a lot of control in our city. I mean, you're relying on these two positions to heavily keep our city running. I just think it's a bad year for us to look at this, because I do want whoever runs for mayor to know exactly what they're walking into. And you're not gonna have time for a charter change for it. You're not gonna have time for a position to change. I just think it's bad timing right now, to be honest. I think
I mean,
we're putting the cart before the horse.
I think there's plenty of, I think there's plenty of time to make it, you're just adjusting the salary by creating the city administrator position. You're just then kind of realizing that you're reducing probably the mayor's responsibilities in that on a day-to-day basis, so he probably is not necessarily needed full-time. So you just reduce that compensation down to that factor. And everybody going into the mayor's race would know that that's done and that's what the position is if we agree with that. I mean,
Yeah, it's still hard
That's-
to, oops, sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to throw something in. Well, one thing is the charter allows for it now. So if we want to do that, but we can't take away the mayor's responsibilities because those are given to him by the charter. We can't lessen those.
true, you can't lessen the responsibilities, but you can, I think, kind of come up with common sense and think that if a city administrator position is there to oversee all the duties of all the directors, and you've got one person overseeing that, which the mayor's doing a large part of that now, that would reduce probably his or her workload down to a point that you probably could look at a salary adjustment at that point would make sense. And that, I'm not saying, the mayor can work 400 hours a week, if he wants to, or 1 hour a week now. I mean, there's no charter or anything that says what the mayor has to work, right? Thad, we've talked about that, right?
There are duties and responsibilities, but no
set
timing
hours.
requirements.
Well, and I
Right,
think
so-
we take the full-time, part-time out of it. Like, I think we take that language out, because I think everybody kind of gets hung up on it. For me, it is your 120, 140 salary range, city administrator reporting to your $30,000, $40,000 mayor? Does that look, I mean, and when you look at all these other cities, that's not how they have theirs laid out for a reason. They don't have their leading person reporting to their $30,000, $40,000 mayor. They just don't. And so it's hard to look and say, yeah, and I agree, we could reduce the mayor's salary and move forward, but we're still saying our mayor, who can define their own schedule, is reporting to council, and your person who's doing the majority of your large picture is reporting to somebody who may or may not be in the office on a regular basis. That's hard for me to grasp and to sell the public.
So if I could weigh in on just a point of clarification here. So if you're referring to a city manager form of government where the person hired is reporting to council, that's on the one hand, that would require a charter change.
Correct.
The city administrator that is permitted by charter now would report to the mayor. Regardless of how many hours the mayor would or would not actually spend in the office, that level of accountability would be to the mayor. And that is the way it is in places like Grove City, Whitehall. There are a handful around in that Morpsey survey that was provided where you have a strong mayor and an administrator who reports to that mayor. I think in terms of salary considerations, whether the salary of the mayor is greater than or less than or comparable to the city administrator, doesn't account for the fact that a mayor is the elected mayor, when you have a strong mayor system, who's elected by all the voters of the city, versus if you have a city manager, that person is reporting to council members who are elected by the city, but who may, be receiving very modest stipends for their service. So I think that, I would encourage you to think about sort of the political accountability aspect versus necessarily salary, because that varies so widely for the elected officials.
So I hear you, but I will argue the fact that in the cities that you pointed out, they are 3, if not 5 to 6 times our size. I mean, Whitehall, I'm looking at it, it's 20,000. Grove City that you pointed out is 41, almost 42,000 people. So to have 2 people and have that position, like, I can understand that. We have 9,000 people, and so we do have to consider the financial aspects and having 2 top-heavy. I mean, just in the general conversations, I think most of us agree having 2 top-heavy positions is not the way we should be going for 9,000 people in our population.
But it wouldn't, we have the right to say it's not 2 people top-heavy. We have the
Correct.
right to reduce the salary down. That's my take on it. I mean, I agree, I would not support the mayor's making the current salary and creating a city administrator at that amount. But I could come to the conclusion that I think it's time to move this city more forward to a professional position, full-time, of somebody that's got more experience in running a city and working around, than if somebody got elected that didn't have that experience. We have the person that would be there to, that would have the experience to sustain that type of change. So that's where I'm taking your argument, I hear you, but I'm
Yeah.
taking that out by saying that it would come, I think, with a reduction in the mayor, so you don't have a top-heavy situation. So I think that refutes that argument.
When there's around 20,000 in Whitehall and around 9,000 here, but it is a much larger area. Whitehall is, Canal Winchester covers a much broader area than Whitehall does.
Well, we have potential to grow a
Yeah.
lot faster than they have. They're landlocked.
And so I would ask you, like, how would you sell that to somebody in the community and say, your mayor, who we're thinking of, the mayor position, regardless of the person, regardless of the hours, the mayor position that we are considering lowering down to what we consider to be a reasonable fee for that person, so we can have a city administrator. How would you argue that to your community, that your city administrator is reporting to somebody at a 30 to 40,000 who may or may not have the experience of a city? How do you justify that to the community?
Well, it'd be that, like Thad just pointed out, it's the same thing. How would you sell the city, you're reporting back to council people making $6,000 a year? If you have the city of, if you had a city manager government like you're talking about, we'd report to somebody making $2,000 to $6,000 maybe in some communities. So the same scenario would be no matter if you set it up reporting to the mayor or reporting to council. So I think you got to take the salaries out and just realize that the mayor is there. Yes, he's the top of the chart, and you got then the city administrator, and then everybody below the city administrator and above the mayor, and that's your pie chart. That I think organizational chart that would be there. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think I'd sell it that we're going to get somebody probably that has a good bit of city background, that knows how to run a city, and if somebody happens to be different, than the mayor now, that doesn't have maybe the experience, we're set with somebody. I think we're in a better position at that point because you've got somebody that has a lot of government experience in a position running the city instead of this new person coming in that maybe doesn't have a whole lot of experience coming in running the city at a time when it's.
I have another question for Mr. Boggs, if you will. In the past, you've probably seen a lot of city administrators, city managers with such as what we have and what Whitehall has. Where have you seen it maybe before that it didn't work with a city manager and maybe they went to a city administrator where it may have worked better? If I'm making myself clear, like most of the cities you've dealt with or know of have probably gone to city managers, and then some went away from that and then maybe adopted a city administrator with a mayor and not a weak mayor, but continue to have a strong mayor. Have you seen it go from manager to city administrator?
I cannot say that I have personally seen it go from a city manager form to a strong mayor with a city administrator form. I have not personally seen that. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
Not with all three, just maybe where a city tried a city manager, weak mayor, and then took it off the table and changed back to a strong mayor.
Yeah, I have not seen a city manager form of government, which by definition has a weak mayor. I've not seen that changed then to strong mayor with or without a city administrator.
Okay.
Not to say it hasn't happened. I have not seen that. I've seen, I can think of one place where there was some talk in the community at one point about doing that, but it never came to fruition.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say that I appreciate all this discussion. It's very healthy and helpful. We've gone over quite a bit of this, but just the way my mind works, please forgive me, it's just, I want to see, I want us to work on a path forward for this. And so I'm just kind of playing around with ideas in my head. You know, I mentioned conjoining a, would it be a resolution or an ordinance, Dad? For the mayor and administrator salary and position?
I can't recall, I'd have to pull up the
Okay.
charter and see if it calls for one specifically, but
So-
we did it either way.
It's an ordinance.
I
Yeah,
think
ordinance,
the
okay.
mayor's, I think the administrator's salary was in the budget last year that we
Yeah.
approved.
So my suggestion would be, if it's feasible, Mr. Boggs, I think we could solve this by putting forth two separate pieces of legislation. One being a no change to anything, regular mayor's salary, what we've been doing before, and another one being the reduced salary of the mayor with the administrative position, and we just see which one passes. I
So-
think that's, if we're allowed to do that.
That's fair, but we're trying, the item point was salaries, not roles and jobs, it was actual.
No, I
numbers. So I
understand,
think we
yeah.
should talk about some numbers too.
Well, I understand that, but that's the difference between what I'm proposing is, so on one hand, you'd have something where you'd have a higher mayor's salary with no administrative position tied to it, and another one that would have a reduced mayor's salary.
Well, that's
with-
where we gotta like figure
I
out
under-
what that
yeah.
number's gonna be.
Yeah,
There's
I understand.
structure, there's authority, and there's salary. There's kind of three different things that need to be dissected. And are you suggesting that the structure be one element of an ordinance and a salary be a second ordinance?
No. So
So what are you
So the-
proposing a structural change
on one,
on,
so my suggestion is we bring forth two separate pieces of legislation. One being what we normally do, which is just a mayor's salary, no change, it's what we typically do.
Or with a percentage, or like like a cost of living
Cost of-
increase,
yeah.
like type piece of.
The other one being a reduced mayor's salary with an administrative position, city administrator position tied to it. Does that make sense?
It does, but in that scenario, you've left the variable of the mayor's salary still to be undetermined, because I don't think any of us have an idea of where, if we went forward with the city administrator's role and approved that, what we were going to do with the mayor's salary, because I've heard a whole range of numbers thrown
Yeah,
out there.
well, we need to
Yeah,
come to a
agreed.
conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just,
And so, I mean, and a couple points about that, I mean, when you are an executive and you're running an organization and you are pulled in every different direction, as you are oftentimes, it makes it nice when you have a key lieutenant that you can trust to run that, so you can do the executive things that you want to do to work on, bettering the community, whether it be being at events instead of being in a meeting for operations and things like that. I can see that it gives the chief executive of the city that flexibility to truly be an executive and work on the city rather than in the city. And that's just a mindset that I have coming from business. But I think that there's absolutely a role for it. And then the second point is the continuity of operations for our city is incredibly important. We are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We are one of the only municipalities in the greater Columbus metro area that maintains its own sanitary, storm, and water systems. Not a lot of cities do that. They rely on the city of Columbus, and then they're at the whims of the city of Columbus. So we're in a really fortunate position here, but we have to protect the integrity of those operating utilities because they're absolutely critical. At the end of the day, that is one of the primary things we do, and I think having an administrator who is familiar with those operations as mayors come and go over the years gives continuity to our city, to our residents, and to our city services. When it comes to asking the voters what they think. I've gotten some comments from residents, and I've listened to them, and they've been good. But I would also say that there was an election several years ago where the charter provision to change to add the administrator was approved by the voters of this city. And so at this point, are we okay with it? And that's going to be a yes/no piece of legislation. And what are we going to pay them? So we got to get to that number, what we're going to pay them. The more I've thought about this, and I've looked around the city and I've talked to people, I have a friend who used to be on the council at Grandview City, and he said that they pay their mayor $50,000, and he said, honestly, it's really not worth it to be the mayor of Grandview because of the amount of work you have to do for the money. And that was what he told me. So we do need to make sure that the position pays enough to make sure that we get a good qualified person in there, and the voters pick who the mayor is. You know, if we're gonna think that we're gonna influence that, we're not. The voters are gonna show up, they're gonna punch their ticket, and they're gonna pick. And it's their pick, and I think we need to remember that. So I think we need to pick a number to stick to. I'm gonna throw $80,000 out there, because I think that's about a 20% decrease in what we're paying now, and would still gives the mayor a good living, so he can engage in the job full-time. And I would hope that the mayor, whether it's he or she, will do that. And if they're not, then they'll answer to the voters 4 years later. I think we're making it too complicated. I might be too high on the 80, but I'm just telling you where I'm coming from. And when it comes to council salaries, I was talking to Ms. Amos, she said there hasn't been a raise in 6 years. I did the math real quick. If we put a 3% raise compounding over the last 6 years, that takes it to 8,100 and change. Now, there's other people out here that I'm on this body with that get credit from public bodies, from other public pensions. And one factor they may want to consider is what is the minimum amount that you have to earn for PERS to get a full year's service credit? And I think it's like $9,200. Is that a statutory thing or is that a PERS thing?
That is outside of my direct area of expertise. I don't know if Mrs. Jackson knows.
I'll look it up, see if I can find it.
So that was my food for thought. Thanks.
I'm going to say high on the salary. I look at Pickerington with 23,000 residents, their mayor makes 45. You look at Obetz, they make 21, they have 5,300. You look at Dublin, who has almost 50,000 current residents, the mayor makes $15,750. You're looking at Reynoldsburg, who has 41,000 population, the mayor makes $9,700. The internet, that's where you find everything.
I couldn't find that Morrison study.
It's all
that makes sense
true.
with all that
So,
stuff.
It's all over.
Ms. Amos, if you were going to,
If I had to throw a number?
if you had to throw a number out, what would it be?
With the number of people that we have in our residence, just based on some of the other things, I would say between 30 and 40,000 tops.
That's about where I am.
I'm at 50.
I'm more with Mrs. Amick with the 50 range. Mr. Buskirk or Mr. Walker, do you have a number that's in your head?
I was leaning towards the 50,
50?
but I'm still undecided, with the conversations.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Walker?
I would also be leaning towards 50.
I
can move.
can move to that.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why 50 is hard for me. 50 is not something somebody would quit their job over, most likely. So you're looking at somebody who would take this on based on Canal Winchester's median income. It's not somebody who's going to quit their job. It's going to be somebody who's either retired or doing this as a part-time gig. So 50 is hard for me. You either make it.
We might get the next Mayor Pete.
Oh, my, stop.
We might get some young man who comes up and runs for mayor and wins, and because he's like, $50,000 is a lot of money, I'll go for it, and watch him be the best thing that ever happens in this town.
The bottom line, unless the structure is changed, though, the mayor is still accountable for the execution of these responsibilities laid out in the charter. Whether that person chooses to delegate, that's up to them. But we're not proposing a responsibility change.
Yeah.
So if you're still holding the mayor accountable for executing on these responsibilities, that to me is not a $30,000 a year job.
And Ms. Amos, I'd ask to clarify your line of thinking on that. If 50 is not something that somebody's going to quit their job over, you were proposing 30 to 40, which is lower.
Right, to
So-
me, we would get more people who would be interested, knowing they have a strong city administrator. You would get more people interested to be able to do this as a position that a retired person, this would be interesting to them.
You don't think a retired person would be interested in a $50,000?
I'm not saying
gig?
they wouldn't, I'm just saying, I think more retired people might consider the hours, the work. Like I said, I also look at other cities and see what they're doing, so it's hard to say, we're only 9,000, but let's go 25,000 more than most of these cities. Like, that's,
Well, if we use that logic, we'd have a lot more, if we used like a per capita number, we'd have a lot more police on the streets too. But we don't use that on every formula.
Patrick liked this formula.
So the bulk of it, what I'm hearing is mostly the 50,000 and Mr. Shea.
You know,
you said
that
you
was
were
a number
looking for-
that I came up with just as we were speaking here, but that number could go up a little bit as far as I'm concerned, you know, but
I think there's some people
just
that.
right tonight you ask, and that's,
Yeah.
you know, kind of the consensus, it sounds like it.
Yeah, and I think this is the whole point of the discussion, right,
Mhm.
is, and like Mr. Shea said, you know, we can talk about, you know, how the workflow is gonna work, but we need to get a number down. And so, you know, 50 was kind of what was floating in my head. Patrick had an idea of something else. And so just getting something down, I think, is the goal of what we're trying to do here, right?
Well, Mrs. Amos made a really good point that, you know, for what we're expecting, what their job requirements is and responsibilities, are you really gonna get a qualified person for that? And, you know, at $50,000, are you gonna get a qualified person? Because at the end of the day, we wanna make sure that it's a salary enough to incentivize a high-quality individual to seek the office too. I mean, there's a give and a take here. It is a public service job. It's a thankless public service job. You just get yelled at a lot, I'm pretty sure, don't you?
And without a charter change, the voters of the city of Canal Winchester will hold the mayor accountable, whether that person is making $10,000 a year or $100,000 a year. The residents who voted that person in will hold that person accountable.
Well, and there's part of the, like, I understand we're picking a salary, and you know, and whatever the medium is, I mean, I completely understand. But you know, we can go back to what Patrick said too. The voters are picking it, and they may not be picking the right person. I mean, we've seen popularity contests before in elections, let's be honest. So they may not be looking at the person and saying, I think for 50,000, that person can do it. They're gonna be looking at a lot of other things. Who dropped off the coolest pen, or who was the
Welcome to
nicest-
politics.
I know, and so that's the thing, like, we're picking a salary and we're saying, because we want somebody to apply who's qualified, but realistically, our voters are the ones who go, and we have to make sure that, you know, they're picking the person that's gonna be the next leader.
I would just want to point out one thing. Entry-level position at City Canal Winchester, right out of high school, is $43,000 plus. Just throw it out there.
That's a really good entry level, though. I like that.
Right out of high school, though. So,
Patrick would like to apply, he says. You can't work weekends.
Let's see.
I mean, I'm sure everybody has had lots of residents coming up and having this conversation. I hope more will show up. I know Ms. Sargent's going to talk later on this. It's maybe, no, she says no. But we've had lots of residents come up to us and talk about it. And so I hope that some of them will come and just share their thoughts too, because it is their city.
Are they talking, the ones I've talked, the people that I've talked with are about not full-time salaries for both positions. And I think, I don't want to put words into anybody's mouth, but that seems to feel like a thing that most of us seem to agree on. So I think that for that resident, those residents who feel that way, I think we are in agreement. the question I'm struggling with is still, are residents wanting a structure change, which in turn would then lead to a charter change, which we now, I believe, realize we can't get done
Correct.
before the election. Are they wanting a structure change?
And so, and most of the, when you try to talk to residents, you try not to lead
Right.
the answer.
Absolutely.
So I will phrase it as, so do you, if you have your mayor at this salary and you have your city administrator, your current charter says this, how do you feel about that? And most of them have, even the one I talked to the other day that I've shared with some of you was like, no, you need to change to a city administrator strong. And this is the way our city needs to go. This is the best leadership for us at this point in time of the game. So that's why I've struggled so much with just saying, yes, we can go ahead and go through with this, because I still feel like we're putting the cart before the horse.
Well, I think
But
for
it's just wrong
that,
timing.
for that viewpoint, nobody says that can or can't be done. It's just the timing would not allow it to happen before the mayoral election.
Well, we could try it and unwind it too. If it goes horrible, we can undo it as quick as we made it.
Explain.
Well, once we create it, we also have the ability to uncreate it. Any piece of legislation we pass, we can undo. So we always have the ability to undo something.
You have to remember, no matter what we do, the mayor that runs next time is subject in 2025 to a charter review commission. It's going to happen in 2025. That's can all be unraveled in that charter. Now, I'm not sure of the legality of, would it take effect then probably maybe the next mayor election, or would it take effect that next year?
It would depend on how you write it, but you would, when you do that kind of amendment, you write it such that it passes, November of 2025 and then takes effect either at the end of the current term or
Right.
some period
Right, so
a ways out.
Yeah, so no matter what we do, if we leave it the same, there still could be a radical change at the next charter review, which is in 2025. If we do this now, there might be or might not be a change at that charter review commission. You can't predict the future, so that person, whoever that is, that's going to run, the people that are going to have to know that and understand that and take that on as a possibility.
I got one more thing to throw out there, and I don't know if any of you even know this or not, but the mayor's position is the only management position in the whole city. It does not get PERS pickup.
I'm sorry, does not what?
Get PERS pickup,
pickup.
because it's an elected position. I don't think we're allowed to have PERS pickup as an elected position.
You guys have it.
You got it.
We do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would
Well,
just
you
have
got
to
your
be in
choice
the-
of Social Security or PERS.
Well, how
That
about
was a
50
little
and
of a raise.
How about
quite a few
50
years
and
ago.
a
In lieu
PERS
of the
pickup?
raise, okay.
Are you back to our salary, or are you talking about the mayor?
No, I'm talking about the mayor. How about 50
Oh, I
and
thought he was
how about
saying
50 and a PERS pickup? That'll make that
How much
50 go a
is a
little further.
PERS pickup?
About 10%. It's whatever the employee's contribution is to
Be
PERS.
about
which I think is-
5,000.
Was it 10.25?
If we came,
Just 10 flat? The city's is 14?
Were you able to find the buy-in amount? Now I'm curious what Patrick said.
It is $696.84 per month as of January 1st of 2023.
Is what you have to make for a year.
how much
To be
is-
considered, yes.
how much is?
That's earnable salary, $696.84.
I need a $46 raise.
And then currently,
So
our
what- yeah, how
our
short are
highest,
we? How
our
short-
highest paid city council member is the president, and they make $604.25 a month. So you're about, $90, give or take.
I think
for
we
that
can afford
individual.
that.
So that would be, annualized, it would be like 836208, or you could round up to 8400.
I'll never see it. but-
Does it have a, no, you won't. Does it have an automatic like CPI inflation with it, or
No.
is it? Okay,
Not that I know of.
thank you.
have retroactive for the last 8 years?
No ex post facto, Mr. Clark.
you're
No
saying
ex
there's
post
a
facto.
chance.
Okay. So are we good, but bring up legislation at 50,000, start at 50? I mean, we can amend that. Start
Let's
at-
do it. I'd like to see legislation drawn up at 50 with the, plus a PERS pickup.
Okay.
And then also, I mean, for council, let's give everybody the credit. Like, I mean, let's try to, that would take it up to 8,400. I mean, Mr. Jim sat here and told us that we all haven't taken a raise for a long time and we should.
Hold on, Amanda's gonna talk.
No, I was going to go back to the mayor. I just wanted to clarify some stuff for when we write ordinances, but keep going, keep going.
Oh, I lost it. Squirrel.
So let's take it up to 83,000, which is. what- Yeah.
8,300?
Oh, yeah, call it 8,400. I mean, let's get, and, maybe put
Who's taking it?
a 3%, a 3% pop for the
Cost of
year
living.
after, just so that it keeps up with that PERS number, but
I mean, I'm just gonna say it out loud. This was the battle we had before. First of all, it kind of seems substantial. I appreciate the money, don't get me wrong, but it seems substantial. That's $2,000 plus, a little bit more per year. Not saying we don't deserve it, because most of us do lots and lots of work to do this job. But the other thing we've argued in the past, and I'm just gonna say it, doesn't mean it's a great argument, but that every election we have had competition, which meant it was at least interesting to people.
huh?
Every year, we've had an election, we've had a competition. We've not had, like in the school board, last year, there was no competition. Everybody that put themselves on, got on. There was no competition.
What does that have to do with money?
So we're still appealing.
I think we're appealing because we've got people that care about this town and want to make sure they take care of it. I think that's why we're all here.
I mean, I would want to sit next to us, but
How's everybody feel about 8,400?
I mean, how much do we need to just bump it to the one full year credit? That's not
8,400.
80, you'd need 84? I thought it was like 90, I thought you said $90 would get,
A month,
yeah, I'm on.
oh, yeah.
and that would get only your president, that's not
Okay.
all of you.
Oh, no, I was making the floor 8,400.
What's that?
Make the floor 8,400.
Right.
And then president would be a little bit higher, wouldn't he?
President and vice president are both higher, president being highest, then vice president, then the remaining members of city council.
I'm happy with the way things are.
I don't need a raise, but we had a resident come in here and
Yeah.
lambast us about getting that.
Let's
So
hear from everybody.
It sounds like the majority of what I'm hearing is to give the council a raise. I haven't heard much objection to that, other than myself.
Does
You know,
anybody
you
want-
two, I don't,
I'm not
I'm
strongly
kind of
opposed, I'm
indifferent
just
on it.
saying, like-
I don't really, I'm not going to be here, it doesn't really matter.
What are you saying, Bob?
But, well,
Well, let's ask our new people. I mean, I think
yeah,
it's
I
important to
mean,
consider
what do you
everybody.
guys?
Well, again, I don't personally need the money, but I'm, like you said, Joe, I'm never going to turn away money. But when I think about, the number of seats that we're going to have available in the next election on council, I think it's important to tell people, make sure they understand what they're getting into, and they will be compensated for what they're getting into. So I don't necessarily, I didn't come in with a number in mind. My research, it was all over the board.
It's crazy.
Anywhere from 13K to 49K. And I don't think anyone's going to give us 49K, but 13K was was kind of the ballpark, and that was through payscale.com, so.
And if we give it to ourselves, we probably won't get reelected.
Probably not.
I wouldn't reelect me.
I mean, I think you make a good point. We have, since I've served, it's been the same salary since the very beginning. And that's fine. And I don't need it to live either. But at the same time, you start falling back you know, you do that for a number of years and it gets so low that, yeah, do people really want to subject, and it does cost money to run a campaign and things like that, so.
One of the things I did read, and don't quote me, I was thinking it might have been Grove City. Recently, they turned down a council raise, but approved a percentage of cost of living increase. And I can't recall if it was 3% or 5% or something like that. So that's another alternative. If the vote goes no $2,000 raise, does that mean there's also no cost of living raise, or do those have to be separate? I don't know, I'm just asking the question.
I think we as council can,
Decide.
We decide.
Yeah.
For the city employees, do you guys have a cost of living built into theirs? No?
No. We bring any potential increase in hourly wages to council when we bring you the budget every year. It's not automatic.
Okay. But I mean, are you raising them every year? I mean, I know last year.
If we can afford it, we would obviously like to in order to retain our employees, but if, financially speaking, we couldn't do it, then we wouldn't do it.
So there's no across the board, like, set amount, for everybody, like a 2% or 3% or 4%?
It's not guaranteed, no.
You have a range though, right?
It's merit
The
based,
highest
right?
that we've done is 3.5%.
Based on merit.
When we did merit raises, yes. We haven't actually done a merit raise in several years. We've just been doing cost of living based on what we as a city can afford.
There was a period, Mr. Shea, there was a period during the recession that nobody received a raise. I think that might have been 2009?
2 years.
2 years, 9 and 10, I believe. Nobody received a raise. But you know what? They all kept their jobs, and they were thankful for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so,
Oh,
they all agreed to it up front, including myself.
Don't laugh at me, but when I decided to run for council, I did not even know it was a paid position. I did not know we received some sort of a stipend for serving on council.
I actually remember telling you, and you were like, you get paid to do this? I was like, yeah, not a lot, but you get paid.
I'm also okay with keeping it the same. I mean, it's something that I committed to do for 4 years, and it's a service job. It's not here to make money and enrich us. It's a service job. It's to compensate us for our time.
Agreed. I think being the newest member, I wasn't expecting to have to vote on a raise. I came in knowing that there was a stipend for being on city council. But I also think it's important for residents to recognize how many years that city council went without a raise. And I think if we do something, I think it should be a cost of living increase. It doesn't have to be a huge raise, but I think that's important to keep people interested in supporting our city through being city council members.
So
Yeah,
if I might, in the interest of getting ordinances or resolutions prepped for next meeting, I think we separate the council adjustment from a mayoral adjustment, because you're grappling with different issues here. Then my question is, with the mayoral adjustment, do you want to include within that the creation of the city administrator, the budget for which
Yes.
is already in the budget? Make that one piece, and then council an entirely separate piece.
Yeah.
I think they should be conjoined. I mean, are we allowed to do that?
I'd rather not.
Yeah.
I think put them as separate.
I think we need to, because I think if you're going to change the mayor's salary and not have the city administrator position, I think you're doing a disservice to it. I think you need to, if you're going to take, the whole idea of reducing the mayor's salary is because of the city administrator. And if you're going to do the reduction in the mayor's salary and put it up for a vote, you need to put that whole option in concrete together at one time so that it's a yay or a nay.
I think you're confusing that between, I think we're separate, we're doing that as one piece of it, and then council
Okay.
salaries would be, like the cost of living on council would be separate. But yes, you have the mayor, salary set and
The city
and the city
administrator.
administrator approved, position approved
In the
on
same
one
ordinance.
piece and then another.
Are we allowed to do that?
Yeah.
Why would you? Like, what are the pros of doing that versus having a mayor's salary ordinance, a city admin position approval, and then if there's an adjustment for council? In my mind, those are three distinctly separate issues.
I think and I agree with you on separating, I'm just gonna say that, but I think the fear is if you reduce your mayor but don't approve, I think that's the fear.
Oh, one thing you could do is in that legislation, let's call it establishing a salary for the mayor, 2024, 2025. You know, section 1 says the salary will be $50,000 per year. Section 2 says that the effectiveness of section 1 will be contingent upon approval of the administrator position. And then section 3 says, if no administrator position is approved, then it'll continue at the same or some COLA type of increase.
I'm all right with that. I like that.
That makes sense.
And then you'd have a separate ordinance that is, we approve the creation of the administrator position. And then a third one that is adjustment to council salary.
So we'd want to make sure that we were voting on the administrator position first then, right?
It wouldn't matter because by virtue of the language in the
So-
mayoral one,
Yep.
So if we voted on mayor and changed it, and then we didn't approve the city administrator, he's saying it would have the language to revert back to the other salary.
Okay.
If then, kind of.
So did
Yeah.
we decide on the 50,000 and are we allowed to add the PERS pickup on that?
yes.
So is that where everybody's at?
I'm okay with it.
Can I ask a few clarifying questions? Just, the current mayor's salary ordinance also includes a couple other benefits, one of which is a monthly travel allowance of $500 per month, as well as the ability to enroll in or opt out of medical, dental, vision, and life insurance. Basically, the mayor has the same ability as any full-time city employee when it comes to health insurance. So just throwing that out there, if you want us to keep that in, take it out.
Yes.
Let's keep
Yeah, keep
Okay.
it in.
leave that.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Are we keeping the $500 travel, or should we be doing mileage like we do for most people?
I mean, would a person who's theoretically going to be working lesser hours still do as much
Still do
travel?
as much traveling,
Yeah,
right?
let's not do mileage.
Yeah.
Mayor, can I ask just how often
I don't
you,
think that's true.
Mayor, how often
I
do
think it
you
could even
use
be
that?
more.
I think it'd be more too.
It is just an allowance, so regardless of how much he travels in a single month, he is getting the $500.
That covers like
Oh, I see.
mileage.
That is use of his personal vehicle for city business.
Okay.
And Mary Ebert, I didn't quite hear you. Are you suggesting that if there was a city administrator, the mayor would have more time then to travel and go out and meet other?
I see it that way, yeah.
I see, okay, thank you.
I would be for
Are we
leaving
all right
that.
with the 3% then for council?
Yeah.
Does that sound reasonable, fair?
Have
Yeah,
you
that's
seen the CPI?
Well.
8.7 or 7.6
I
is the
know,
COLA.
but that's what the city got, was close to 3. I don't,
Yeah, I mean, I think
think.
whatever your city
I'm
got.
good with
Do
3.
you think, I mean, I think it's a start in the right direction at least.
So on the mayor's salary, though, we're looking at 50,000 is what you guys are requesting, plus a $6,000 car pickup, plus a 10%, so $5,000 pickup on the insurance, and then potentially the insurance. So you're looking at a salary of 60 to 65,000 with benefits.
Plus taxes and SUDA, FUTA, FICA, MICA,
What?
all the extra withholding stuff that you have to do on, as the employer side. Yeah, it's called a benefits package.
Okay, just making sure.
I'm okay with that.
We're clear
Yeah,
on it.
I'm good.
Okay, so we've established the $50,000. I'm assuming that is if council were to establish the city administrator position. What happens if council chooses not to establish the city administrator position? What type of compensation are we looking for the mayor then? Are we keeping it where it currently is? Are we also giving that a 3% in To go with councils?
Yeah, I'm good with the 3%.
Okay.
And I'd like to see like 3%, because this is a 2-year,
Correct.
so it'd be 3% year one, an additional 3% year two.
But if the city takes it, because if the city doesn't take it, then I don't think the mayor.
Oh, and Jill's got a really good point.
For the, even if it didn't.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, no, Jill's got a really good point. I was trying to get to Amanda. The point is that if the city employees don't get a raise, because that council and the mayor don't get a raise either.
Yeah, if we don't do cost of living for our staff, we shouldn't be doing it for ourselves.
I like that. a
I'll
lot.
look at him to write the language.
Hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Well, yeah, I agree, but I'm just saying, like, it's not right for us to, if our staff doesn't.
That's right. They're the ones that do all the work.
Amen.
One more clarifying question. I'm assuming you want to maintain president of council receiving a higher salary and then vice president receiving something in between president and the rest of council?
So you're just doing 3% across the board?
If that's what council wants.
Yeah, I mean, because they already have a higher salary, so we just do 3%.
So you want to keep that tier is what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And I didn't throw in my 2 cents worth either. I'm okay with staying where council is as far as our pay.
And then one last clarifying question for now. If the city administrator position were not approved, would you also want the OPERS pickup for the mayor in addition to the COLA? Okay.
But the mayor doesn't get it today, right? Or he does get it?
All
He-
of, right, he
he
doesn't get it today.
So if the city administrator is not approved, we go back to essentially status quo, but now we're adding the 3% and we're adding the PERS pickup.
Right. That would all be effective January 1st, 2024.
Okay.
Progress.
It really is.
Okay, yeah, good.
Good
All right, yep, are we done with that? All right, can I move to Housing Council appointments? Is that
Thank you,
Luke?
Mr. Clark. The Housing Council is a group in the city that reviews all the properties receiving a tax exemption every year. We generally meet in the end of March. Council has 2 appointments to that board, which consist of 7 members. The most recent members appointed by council were Patrick Lynch and Mike Coolman, and both their terms have expired. So you'll need council to appoint 2 additional individuals. We are looking at March 30th for the tour date this year. And they meet one meeting a year, and it's generally at the end of March.
So you need their information, who they'd like to appoint by when?
By the next council meeting.
Okay, so for commitment, you said about meeting usually about once a year.
It's 1 meeting a year. It generally lasts all day. We review
Tours.
we tour every property that is receiving a tax exemption. Some internally and externally, some just externally.
I mean, I'm willing to throw my name in. Sounds fun.
I was going to ask if Mr. Lynch or Mr. Coolman have expressed to you their desires to do that again, or they don't want
It
to.
has to be council member, right?
It's council appointed, so it can be anyone
be
council
anybody.
desires. But that would be up to council if they wanted those gentlemen to continue to serve in that capacity, to reach out to them to see if they're interested.
Yeah, I'm able to do it.
I'm already on, aren't I, Lucas?
Mr. Clark is appointed by the Housing Council, correct?
So we only need 1 right now?
No,
No,
you
you
can
need
have
2
2 here,
council
I'm just a
appointees.
different,
Oh,
I'm
you're
kind of
a-
different
okay.
way to get on.
All right, well, Jill's throwing her name out.
I mean, I'd be happy to do it. I've got some learning to understand why they get a tax exemption, but,
Yeah,
Well, I can tell you all about that.
yeah.
okay.
Let's do this.
It is a 3-year term,
Yeah, got it, okay.
3 years.
3-year term.
Thank you. I just got schooled by Mr. Clark in 2 seconds or less, so
And she
thank you.
picked right up on it, she knew exactly what I was talking about, it took me a second.
You said the first meeting is this March?
Correct.
Okay. well,
We're
then-
targeting March 30th.
Okay, so I'm in Chicago, never mind. I can do the schedule, I just can't do this year. That's too short a notice.
I'm unable to participate at all.
What is the date of the meeting?
March 30th.
I'll just come up with 2 days by the next meeting.
It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who is on council. It can be anyone appointed by council.
Jim, would you like to do it?
Ms. Sargent?
Ms. Sargent?
What's it pay?
Nothing, it's just a really good experience.
I'll buy you a donut.
Depends
I'll
on
be
whether we have an
available.
administrator.
Yeah? Okay, we got Mr. Busbrook has agreed to it.
Okay.
So,
Ms. Amick, did you say you were too, or?
Sure, I'll do it.
yeah.
If that's the case, we can do a resolution and prepare that for the next meeting.
Okay.
You have 2 individuals.
Anything else for the good of the order?
Move to adjourn?
Got a motion to adjourn by Mr. Shea, second.
Second?
Second by Mrs. Amos. Roll call, please.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Miss Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Miss Amos?
Yes.
We'll re-adjourn for full council at 7:15.
I'd like to call to order the March 6th Canal Winchester City Council meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Ms. Zamick. Roll call, please.
Ms. Amick?
Present.
Ms. Amos? Here. Mr. Busker?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Milligan?
Here.
Mr. Shea?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here?
Time in is 7:15. First item, we have approval of minutes. Minutes 23-008, February 21st, 2023 work session minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Zamus, second by Mr. Buskirk. Roll call?
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milligan?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Amick?
Yes.
Minutes 23-009, February 21st, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Discussion? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Buskirk, second by Mrs. Amick. Roll call?
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Ms. Amick?
Yes.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milligan?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Public comments. Is there anybody that wishes to speak this evening? Mr. Sergeant?
Do you have something you want me to sign?
Was there not one over there? Oh, it's over there.
I'll sign it after.
That's fine.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. First of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Shea, for acknowledging my email at the last city council meeting. I was not here, but I heard that you had mentioned it. That was the only official acknowledgement that my email was even received, so thank you. And thank you all for discussing it tonight. I also want to thank everybody for the community discussions on the 22nd and 23rd, muchly appreciated. But that's not the important part of what I want to talk about tonight. In February, there was the draft track vote for funding that included the Highway 33 corridor from 270 to the the Fairfield County line. That meeting was very important. It was the first meeting I attended personally, and it was very interesting. I was not even given 2 minutes to talk, 3 minutes, but I was able to talk to Mr. Mike Ditto, who votes for our area. I also was able to talk to Mr. Dingus, who represents District 9 in the southern part of the state. After the staff had gone through all the proposals and what was approved and not approved, we were told that there was an additional $80 million to play with. Mr. Dingus lobbied for funding for a project that was not approved at all, and he convinced them for another $42 million. Nobody, Mr. Dingus, excuse me, Mr. Ditto from our area did not say anything about our project. We need you, and we need you to lobby for that. Additionally, there is $1 billion a year for safe roads for all. $1 billion nationwide. And with that, my time is up.
Thank you for that very good information.
Anyone else? All right. Reports of city officials and staff. Mayor's report, Mayor Ebert.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken. I don't have any more to add to my written report. If you have any questions about that, I'll be glad to answer. But I need the February Mayor's Court report approved, please.
The chair will make a motion to approve the February 2023 Mayor's Court report.
Second.
Motion made by the chair, second by Mr. Buskirk. Roll call.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes?
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Amick?
Yes.
Ms. Samus?
Yes.
Thank you.
Fairfield County Sheriff, Sergeant Walker.
Thank you. I have nothing to add to my written report, but I'll be happy to take questions.
No questions? Thank you, Sergeant Walker. Thank you for all you do. Law Director, Mr. Boggs.
I don't have a report this evening, no requests for executive session either, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Boggs. Finance Director, Mrs. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken. Just one thing to add to my written report this evening. As much as it pains me to say this, we have started talking about the pool this summer. So just so you know, we are working through no changes to dollar amounts, no changes to membership structures or anything along those lines. We've been discussing maybe some changes for the registration process. So just so you know, that is still in the works, and hopefully we'll have something to report to you in 2 weeks on that topic. So.
Questions? Thank you, Mrs. Jackson. Public Service Director, Mr. Peoples.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken. Nothing to add to my written report.
Questions for Mr. Peoples? Thank you, sir. Development Director, Mr. Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken. A quick update on the track process and where we are currently. So the ODOT Track Committee did have a meeting on February 22nd. At that meeting, there was a recommendation for the US 33 projects, which includes the Big Spirit interchange, widening of one additional lane in each direction on 33 from the Franklin County, Fairfield County line to 270, and then reconfiguration of the ramps at 33 and 270. So those three projects were joined into one. The request was for $31.5 million for preliminary engineering, for detailed design, and for road right-of-way acquisition. What the track committee has recommended is that that project be funded for preliminary engineering only. And so that's $19 million out of the $31.5 million that was requested. And so their recommendation was for that $19 million. That would be split up into two fiscal years for ODOT, 2024 and 2025. So the request was for $19 million in 23, for $6 million in 25, for detailed design, and for $6 million in right-of-way in 2025. So that's a recommendation at this point. ODOT the track committee will have their meeting later in March to do a vote on those recommendations. And so I would suggest that any of you that are interested in that project to reach out to your state legislators, let them know the importance of the project to, not only our community, but to everyone that travels the 33 corridor, and see if they can provide any assistance. So I know a number of you have done that already, but the more voices they hear from, the more helpful they can be. It may be unable to be changed at this point where we get those dollars back in this track process, but for future track funding processes, future budgets, transportation budgets, there's always ways that they can help out in making sure that everyone at the state knows that this project's a priority. So.
We just need to have them drive down here on a Friday afternoon.
Or any morning of the week.
Yeah, that's what we should do. Get them out to Hocking Hills for a little, meet and greet on a Friday afternoon, and let them sit in the parking lot, and then have them stay the weekend and come back on Monday morning and roll through rush hour.
Mr. Hare,
Yes.
was there any commentary around why they only funded the pre-engineering piece?
It's my understanding they thought it would be too premature on the projects to fund them for the detailed design and the right-of-way acquisition. They didn't have some of the projects are very large projects, right? Everyone can understand a lane widening. Bixby Road's been designed for years. The 33 and 270 is a very large project. So I think they just thought it was too premature to put that much funding into that project until they had a better idea of what the preliminary design would be.
And will preliminary design kind of give an indication of what they're looking at for cost?
Yes. I mean, they did some cost estimates already. It's $167 million is the total cost.
So maybe about 300 by the time they get done?
I mean, at the rate we're going right now, who knows? It's inflation in construction in Central Ohio is extreme.
So,
And just an FYI, the track committee was very consistent with what Mr. Hare said with the premature. There was 2 projects in the 70-71 interchange reconstruction that they did the same thing to. They did preliminary design funding only and held off, and those were, I believe that was 190 million that they held off on for the construction dollars on. So it was a consistent theme throughout their decision-making process.
Yeah, and it doesn't, I mean, it delays the project, yes, but it doesn't have to delay it significantly. Pickerington Road, the interchange there was last year in the track process, it moved into the Tier 2 status, which was preliminary engineering, and then they got $500,000 for detailed design. Well, in this track process, they got the rest of their detailed design, $12 million for right-of-way and $47 million for construction. And so it can move quickly.
So, do we have, can you get us a list of all the legislatures that are on this 33 corridor so we can start reaching out to them?
Yes, most of them wrote letters of support. I mean, even as far down as Hocking County wrote letters of support for the application.
Oh, sure, it affects us all, I mean.
Yeah, so they're all aware of the project.
All right, is there anything else that we can, other than bothering and pestering our legislatures, is there anything else that we can do that would help?
I mean, that's the best route currently.
Were there other projects that got funding for all 3 phases? The preliminary
Yes.
design, the design, and, interesting. And what, and, you
But
know.
there are also other projects that didn't get any funding
Yeah.
in Central Ohio. Alum Creek Drive, there's a new interchange proposed on 71 around Big Walnut Road. So there are other projects that didn't get funded at all.
So without naming names, are the projects that got all 3 phases approved in one fell swoop, are they areas that are seeing significant growth across the state? Like, what made them, like, Ms. Sargent, I would like to have met this guy who could walk up there and say, hey, I'd like to have your 42 million unused dollars, and they're like, oh, okay. So I'm paraphrasing, but so what were they?
I can actually address that situation if it's the same one that I'm thinking of that Ms. Sargent spoke of, is that there was other funding tied into this. So they would have lost the other funding if this project wouldn't have moved forward.
Mr. Dingus is a very good economic developer, Southeast Ohio.
What was the
Population, 57,000 people.
what was the project? Was it,
Chesapeake bypass.
was it, Chesapeake? Okay.
That's the one that got funded that was not originally slated, was the Chesapeake bypass.
Yeah,
So 7.
yeah.
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 What money they would lose is the Appalachian Regional
Yeah.
Commission. It's an ARC county that federal dollars come in that they would potentially lose if they don't have a proper match with that. But, and they are poor counties down there. I mean, so.
Is Fairfield County considered an Appalachian
No.
county? Okay.
No, it stops at Hocking County.
Yeah, Ms. Amick, I'm not familiar enough with all the programs and where their statuses are. I mean, I have the spreadsheet, but I don't know all the details of all the projects around the state. And it's competitive across the state. There's always more requests than funds that they have available.
Sure. Somebody like me always walks away pouting.
There was also a large dollar amount given to, in the Cincinnati area, that was adjacent to the Brent Spence Bridge, the reconstruction they're doing. It's not the bridge, but it's areas leading up to that on I-75. And then there's some areas just into Cincinnati across the bridge that they need to do a lot of infrastructure work on to make that bridge, new bridge happen.
Can't believe that
Did
thing
did
is
the
still
MEGS, Athens MEGS 33 corridor down there where they have the Super 2, did that receive any money? Did you remember?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yes.
I had heard,
Like preliminary engineering and maybe a little bit of detailed design?
yeah, and that I think jumped out of maybe nowhere. That I don't think was scheduled for anything.
Do they try to spread the money around the state?
They do.
Equally?
It's,
Yeah.
every district puts requests in for funding, and so, they give priority to certain districts. That's why Pickerington Road would be funded before the rest of these. The impacts and the safety impacts are probably larger on some of these other projects along 33, but Pickerington Road's District 5, it was their main request, and this is District 6, which had 7 requests. And you could say that these are 3 separate projects, so it's really 10 requests. They just lumped them all into one.
Matt, can you give some light on how with the 3 projects now all joined together, are they going to try to equally fund and build these out all at the same time, or can they move quicker on Bixby and then later on?
Yeah, based on some of the discussions that we had with ODOT, they don't know. It depends on who you talk to at ODOT. Some of them believe that the 33 main line is the priority that should take a priority. There was a couple other fellows at the Bixby interchange should take priority to that. So, and then others that was the 270 and 33. So it's just a mix. I think it just depends on how it's going to play out in the future as well.
Okay.
They would be designed separately, so they could go separately because they're not all in the same design documents.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mr. Hare, will you send out to council the information about the March meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all, Mr. Hare?
We did have the request for the Myers final development plan, so since the last meeting, we did amend that ordinance to include the restrictions on truck parking, and there is a map that's in front of you this evening that shows where the areas where truck parking is permitted, which would be in the loading areas. And a representative, the owner, is here this evening. If you had any questions for him, they are requesting council's consideration for passing this evening. They've already started construction of the project, and this will delay potentially their project on the pharmacy side of things. So we've approved plans, but we haven't included those pharmacy drive-through in their approved plans, and so they've got another, probably 30 to 60 days to get those plans approved once council passes something.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Hare or the representative?
Did we end up clearly identifying the loading zone?
It's right here.
Yeah, it's on the map in front of you, so it's the area to the north side of the Myers store.
Oh, you're talking about the other one.
Yeah, this,
So that's the only area that would permit commercial parking.
She was talking about the loading zone.
Loading
We
for
talked about like the
customers.
loading zone for,
For the landscape area.
because we said the landscaping center enters into the pharmacy lane. So we wanted to make sure that we were clearly identifying that the loading and unloading for like mulch is not gonna come through that front entrance.
Yeah, I don't believe they have like a loading area currently. Maybe the representative could explain that more. I mean, you go to like a Home Depot and they tell you, you have a specific loading area, but I've never seen that happen at Myers, so.
Right. Normally it was in front of that, where the pharmacy drive-through would be down.
Can you hear me?
I can't.
We added 2 spaces at the exit to the pharmacy loop for queuing in case somebody comes up and their orders aren't ready. For loading, if you're coming out and you don't have like bulk stuff, you can go left down the sidewalk and we have We can mark additional spaces that are there, so just on the south side of the store, so you can come out, turn left, you don't have to get in the queuing for the pharmacy, go over there. All those spaces would be for loading, and then,
So just to make sure I understand, so you're talking right here to your
correct, all of
loading
those
zone.
spaces that align the whole garden center, that will be, and we can rework some of those striping to make it more definitive, like this is your loading area. And then there's those two, like, double doors, which are, have lines out. If there's like a bulk, somebody orders like more than you can put on one of those rolling carts, they could put it and bring it straight out to your vehicle there.
Yeah, I just want to make pedestrian wise with that pharmacy loop, just making sure that we don't, because so many of us are used to coming straight out of the store
Yeah.
right there. Just protecting the pedestrians on that.
We'll make it clear that all those loading spaces are gonna be right on that south side to avoid them. I mean, if you're getting something in the pharmacy loop and that island, you might be going back to the front, but the majority of them for bulk would be on that south side.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Hare? No? Okay. Thank you all. On to resolutions. Resolution 23-009. Clerk, if you'd read that, please.
A resolution strongly urging the Ohio Governor and members of the Ohio General Assembly to restore the local government fund to pre-recession levels.
Discussion? Sponsor is Mrs. Amos.
Motion to adopt resolution 23-009.
Chair will second. Motion was made by Ms. Amos, second by the chair. Roll call?
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Milligan?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Samick?
Yes.
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
No.
Resolution 23-010. Clerk, if you'd read that, please.
A resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a depository agreement with Huntington National Bank for the deposit of public funds and declaring an emergency.
Discussion? Sponsor is Mr. Walker.
I move to adopt resolution 23-010
And declare an emergency.
and declare an emergency. Yes, thank you.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Walker, second by Mr. Shea. Roll call?
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Ms. Samick?
Yes.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milligan?
Yes. On to ordinances. Ordinance 23-011. Clerk, if you'd read that, please.
An ordinance approving the final development plan for the Meyer store located at 8300 Meyer Drive.
Discussion?
So just to
Yeah.
clarify, they want us to waive the second, or the third reading? Is that
Correct.
what you're asking?
Sponsor is Mr. Shea.
Move to waive the second reading and third reading of ordinance 23011.
We're just waiving the third, correct?
Yeah, this is the second reading, so it would be the third reading.
Well, then I'm waiving the third. Thank you.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Shea, second by Mrs. Amos. Roll call?
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milligan?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Samick?
Yes.
And before I move to adopt, I'd like to thank you guys for listening to our feedback and working with us. Thank you. Move to adopt ordinance 23-011.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Shea, second by Ms. Amos. Roll call?
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milligan?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Samick?
Yes.
All right, on to council reports. Next work session council meeting will be Monday, March 20th at 6 PM, followed by April 3rd at 6 PM. And we have CW Human Services, Mr. Walker.
Okay, Human Services updates. Saturday, April 8th is Community Easter Egg Hunt at McGill Park. And Thursday, May 4th is the Senior Prom. This will be held at the high school. And they are partnering with Student Council. There'll be music, dinner, dessert, and raffle, and a good time will be had by all. This year's theme is Cinco de Mayo. For the month of February, Human Services served 410 people, and provided 6,150 meals through the community food pantry and market day initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. CWICC, Ms. Zamick.
Thank you. Our next CWICC meeting will be on March 29th at 11:30, and it will be held here in council chambers and is open to the public.
Thank you. JRD, Ms. Amos, Mr. Shea.
Our next meeting is next Thursday, the 16th, 7 PM, Old Town Hall, and the public is very welcome at Arden as well. Mr. Shea, do you have anything?
Nope.
We're good.
Destinations, the chair. One more winter farmers market to go. It'll be held Saturday, April 1st from 9 to noon at Faith United Methodist. And then the summer markets will begin in May. Still accepting applications from artists for the May 20th Art on the Canal Stroll. Artists can go to Destination Canal Winchester website under the Events tab, click on Art on the Canal to find out more information. CW High School students will be participating in an annual poster contest to develop the poster for the Art on the Canal Stroll. The student whose design is chosen will be given a $500 award. And the first Thursday event is scheduled for May 25th. Bring your chairs and friends and enjoy the evening listening to music of the Poverty String Band from 6 to 9 p.m. Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Busker.
Thank you. An update on the membership for the month of February, it increased by 2. That was a gain of 3 members and a loss of 1. For February, they hosted the Denim and Diamonds Annual Award Dinner. February was filled with preparations for the event, securing sponsorships and silent auction donation baskets. They also hosted the breakfast workshop with Bougie Action Coach. Alexis Donahue was hired on February 6th as a part-time marketing manager. Onboarding has been going very well. It's been an easy process for her to catch on. Upcoming events, we have a happy hour on March 24th at the Olive Branch, the State of the School Luncheon Wednesday, April 12th at the Community Center, and a golf outing on Friday, May 12th at Winchester Golf Course.
Thank you, Mr. Busker. Any old or new business?
I just would like to give a shout out to the Canal Winchester High School Student Council members. They attended a portion of the comprehensive plan meeting, and then they proceeded to give a readout, fully dressed up, and a PowerPoint presentation. They gave that to the steering committee, so I just wanted to give them a shout out and tell them it was a job well done.
Very nice.
I'd just like to give a shout out to Mr. Peoples for his award that he won. I don't have a lot of the details in front of me, but I know it's a prestigious group, statewide organization, and he's had a lot of successful years here. Appreciate your service and job well done. Thank you.
Second that.
Thanks for keeping it flowing.
No other old or new business. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by the chair, second by Mr. Clark. Roll call.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes?
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Amick?
Yes.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Timeout 7:44.